So I fibbed. We are going to go over frequency tables that involve your measures of central tendency because it's not going to take too long. So on your foldable, this is going to go on page 50. So go ahead and title it Frequency Tables, Measures of Central Tendency. And on your foldable, you basically are going to fold it hamburger style, as you probably can already tell by how the foldable is set up. And then this is what's going to go on the front. Okay. When you are dealing with frequency tables, and you are trying to find the measures of central tendencies, the mean, median, and mode is a little bit different, just a little bit. The mode is still the one that shows up the most, but it is basically the entry with the largest frequency. So if you're talking about shoe sizes, then it's the shoe size, or if you're talking about the number of sweets, then it's the number of sweets in the packet that has the largest frequency. So still the one that shows up the most if we have written everything out. The median is still the middle entry, but because remember frequency tables are basically used to kind of help condense large amounts of data, um, one of the shortest ways to potentially do this is basically by taking n, adding 1, and whatever that is divided by 2. Now what does n represent? N represents basically your total data, your total frequency. So if you had 24 packets of sweets, then n would have been 24, and so then you would have just done 24 plus 1 divided by 2, and then find that entry amongst the frequencies. And we'll do an example to help you out with that. And then the mean is kind of like just a little bit of process. You want to multiply your entries and your frequencies together. And once you've multiplied them, you want to sum up all of those to get your total, and then you divide it by your total frequency. So let's go ahead and look at some examples. We got 4 of those, and so we're going to just go through those. Here's the first one. We're going to calculate the mode, the median, and the mean of this data. Okay, this was one of the very first examples we did, talking about the number of sweets in a packet of 24. So we're going to find the mode, and remember the mode is the one that has the largest frequency. Well, the largest frequency is right here with 13. So the entry that has the largest frequency is 22. So our mode is 22. Again, it's the one with the largest frequency. Now the median is the middle entry. Now we got 24 packets here, okay? And the trick I told you to use was do 24 plus 1 and then divide that by 2. Well, 24 plus 1 is 25, so 25 divided by 2 is basically 12.5. What we're doing is we're looking for the 12.5th entry in this data, okay? Well, if we go through this, okay, here are your first 2, okay? And then you have 3 more. 2 plus 3 is 5, okay? So 2 plus 3 is 5. And now we have 13 more with this particular entry. 13 plus 5 is 18. Now at this point, we've already passed our 12.5th entry. Our 12.5th entry lies within this particular set, which is 22. So that means if we have lined out, 2 20s, 3 21s, 13 22s, and so on and so forth, then the median would have fell basically within those 22s. And so your median is 22. Now for the mean. The first step is to multiply your entries by your frequencies. So our entries were 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and our frequencies are here as follows. So we're literally going to multiply those together. Okay, 20 times 2 is 40. 21 times 3 is 63. 22 times 13, and you guys should be doing this too, is 286. Oops, just doing the same one. 23 times 4 is 92. And then 24 times 2 is 48. So we're going to multiply all those together. Again, we get those just by multiplying straight across. So that's our first step. The next step is we're going to add all those up together. So once we add all those up together, we get a total of 529. That's step 2. And so to find the mean, we're going to take that total of 529 and we're going to divide it by our total frequency. Now we know our total frequency is 24 because again that was 24 packs, and also it says it right there down at the bottom of that column. So then we're going to do 529 divided by 24, and our mean, of course, around the 3 significant figures, is 22.0. And yes, we do need to include the 0.0 because we are rounding. And there you go. So finding your measured central tendencies is still the same. Mode is still the one that shows up the most. Median is still the middle term. The mean, instead of sitting there and doing 20 plus 20 plus 21 plus 21 plus 21 plus 22 plus 22 13 times plus 23 4 times plus 24 2 times, we can shorthand that by basically multiplying those numbers by their frequencies, adding all those up, and then dividing by our total. Let's take a look at this example. It says the table shows the frequency of the number of visits to the doctor per year for a group of children. So we have our number of visits listed here, and then we have our frequencies. So this basically says that there were let's say there were 4 children who didn't visit the doctor any time, like not at all. Then there were 3 children that visited the doctor only 1 time in a year. There were 8 children that visited the doctor twice, and so on and so forth. So it asks us is how many children are in the group. Well, this is basically code for the total frequency. Because remember, this basically, the frequency represents basically how many children are, go to the doctor these certain number of times to the year. So this basically is AKA total frequency. So we basically need to add the frequency line. And it's also kind of good to know, especially in this case, we do not have the total, so we definitely need the total. So the total number of kids in this group is 25. Now it asks us to write down the modal number of visits. Now it's a write down problem, so that means the answer is staring us in the face. The modal number of visits is the one that showed up the most with the largest frequency. Well, the largest frequency is right here, okay? So the modal number of visits is going to be 2, not 8. 8 represents the number of times that 2 shows up if we were to write it all out. So the modal number of visits is 2. Lastly, we have the mean. So that means we're going to multiply. So remember, the first step is we multiply our entries by our frequency. So that represents our number of visits times our frequency. And we are going to add all these up together because that's the second step. So I'm going to go ahead and type it out this way. Okay, so we're going to multiply those all together, and we are going to add those up for a total of 55. So that's step 2, and then step 3 is just divide by our total frequency, which is 25, and our mean number of visits is 2.2. We are not going to round that to the whole number because I know you're like, well, you can't visit a doctor 2.2 times. That's true, but it's asking us for the mean here, and the mean isn't always going to be a whole number. So the answer is 2.2. Okay? Now what I want you guys to do is there's 2 more questions. They're exam style questions. So what I want you to do is I want you to do both questions first. Pause the video, do both questions, and then check your answers once you are done. So pause the video. All right, so as a bag contains 6 balls number 1 to 6. The ball is drawn at random and the number is noted. The balls then returned to the bag. The numbers for the first 30 draws are given to you. So you got the number of the ball number at the top, and then how many times that particular ball number showed up. Now it says that this was drawn, you did this for the first 30 draws. So 30 basically represents the total of our frequency. And we need to know that to find the value of n. So that means that 4 plus 5 plus 3 plus n plus 6 plus 5 should all equal 30. So to figure out what the value of n is, all we're going to do is just subtract those numbers from 30. And so you should have got that n was 7. So now that we know that n is 7, we could find the mean. So when we multiply those all together, we get 94, and we're going to divide that by 30, and our mean is going to be 3.13, rounded to three significant figures. So hopefully you guys got that too. And then lastly, it says write down the modal number. Remember, that's the one that has the largest frequency, and that mode is going to be 4, okay? So realize again that all your answers are basically going to represent the entries. In this case, it was the numbered balls that were picked out. For this one, it was the number of visits. For this one, it was the number of suites, okay? It's never going to be your frequency number, like as an answer to mean, median, or mode. And now for the last one, okay? We have to calculate the mean grade, which means we're going to multiply the grade by the frequency, we're going to add it up, and then we're going to divide by the total. So when we multiply the grade by the frequency, we get a total of 544, and then we divide it by the total frequency, which is 120, and we get a mean of 4.53. Now to find the percentage of students that receive a grade of 5 or 4. Well, percentage, that's asking, out of these 120 kids, how many received a grade of 4 or 5? Well, the number of kids that received a 4 were 34, and the number of kids that received a 5 was 32. So you're going to add those up together and then divide it by the total, which is 120, and you'll get the decimal form of your percentage, which is 0.55. So that basically lets us know that 55% of the kids in this school received a grade 4 or 5. And the last one says write down the modal grade. Remember, the modal grade is the grade that shows up the most, that has the largest frequency, and that would be 4. And that's it. So hopefully measures of central tendency with frequency tables wasn't too challenging.